You're absolutely limitless. There's nothing you can't do. Whatever you put your mind to, you will succeed. Hi, I'm Corinne Christensen and welcome to my YouTube channel. I just want to talk a little bit today about different times in my life where there's been so much struggles and see if anyone can relate. And if you do relate, please comment. I was just roughly about 18 years old and I was a single parent. And I really had to start like from ground zero. I had to get a place and be on my own. And I'd never, unfortunately, I'd never really babysat. I didn't really plan on children, to be honest. And, my daughter is the most wonderful, precious gift that I've ever been granted in this lifetime. And, when hard times hit me now, I just kind of think back to the hard struggles I've persevered through. Being a single parent was probably the hardest job I've ever done. And for a lot of years, I waitressed, did, some dead-end jobs that I knew, were okay in the time being, but weren't going to be any lifelong process, right? And just becoming a new parent and learning, all the parenting strategies and sleepless nights and all the things that we do, it's a pretty amazing skill to craft another human into a functioning member of society that's happy and healthy. And a lot of times don't think we give ourselves any credit for those kinds of things. I ended up going back to school later on in life and, taking another course, and I've been at a much better job for about 27 years, right? But I think that, we can do hard things and it doesn't matter your age or your circumstance. It's really your mindset. And you have to have an unshakable mindset because, we have our friends that will always support us, and that's wonderful. But you'll always have the people that will be like, what is she doing that for? Who does she think she is? Blah, blah, blah. Especially when you do stuff like, being on YouTube, you really do open yourself up to some criticism, and that's fine. But I just think that, even in the process, there is so much growth and so much learning in trying something different. And I feel like age has nothing to do with it. I think I've mentioned this before, like I'm almost 54, getting close. And, it's just a number, right? And, I might not learn quite as fast as some people, but I'm still learning. And I think that there's just nothing but improvement, right? And I just want you to encourage you that, whatever struggles you may have had in your life, that you can just move past them. It just takes time and perseverance. Another thing too is, I had a marriage that didn't work out, and that's not something that, a person plans. And I was probably 48 years old when I had to start all over again. And I was like a 16-year-old gypsy couch surfing for a while. Hadn't done that in a long time. And, now I have my own place and all those kinds of things. But it is like anything that you put your mind to, I just really want to encourage you that you can do it. And you have to have a lot of unshakable belief in yourself. Like I said, just, make the commitment to whatever the end goal is. Like I said, I've talked about this with Neville Goddard. I just love him. You can find all his books on Amazon. And another thing too is like living from the end, right? Embodying that, if your channel blew up tomorrow, let's just say, what does a really successful YouTuber, do you think does every day, right? I'm sure they get up, they have an idea, they research that idea, they look at other people's, million views and try and get some ideas and put it together. They put themselves together and, they just put everything they have into it and they publish it, right? So you have to kind of be from that end state, whatever it is, what if you're going back to school, you're starting a business, you're becoming an entrepreneur. You want to think from that end state. And then another one of Neville's laws that I really like is like the law of detachment. And really what that means is like we put out the seed of intention of what we want. And then instead of always checking, like we always have a story in our head, and the story might be, I've started little businesses and, it didn't work, right? And so if something doesn't work out the way I want, I can go right back to that. Well, the subconscious mind, right? Well, that didn't work. Who's going to want to listen to what you have to say now? All those little, it's like the good guy and the bad guy on your shoulders, right? And you just have to let that stuff go and just like plant your seed and let it go. And like our hardest thing that we do in this lifetime is trust. And for myself, I had some childhood things where, you know, the people that you're supposed to be able to protect you and trust you, it was pretty shaky. And so I do have a hard time, you know, sometimes with myself or others. I'm working on it all the time, right? But, you know, my analogy is that we're heading right now into gardening season. May long weekend is when most people will plant their garden. And so we rototill that soil, right? And we put in some extra manure, maybe a top layer of soil. Now that soil is fantastic. The pH is right where it's supposed to be. And we spend the time making our rows perfect. And we plant our seed. We space them the 3 inches apart, 1 inch deep, whatever the case is. And, you know, we have faith that that seed is going to grow, right? We're not getting up at 3 in the morning with our shovel and we're digging it all up and we are checking and it's like, oh, I just want to check to make sure you're growing. Like, we know it's growing. So it's the same thing with our seeds and our intentions. We just have to quit looking always at the 3-dimensional, right now, the physical reality with our 5 senses, always wanting confirmation. And we have to get our confirmation from ourselves. Like, every time you do something, it's repetition that makes it, you know, into a common practice, doing it over and over again and believing in yourself. That is so huge, right? And if there's any way that I can show support and belief in you, I would love to do that. And if you have something that you'd like to comment, any questions, please do so. But what I want to say is, like, you know, we were never told the power that we have on the inside. And we're always looking for external validation from someone else to say that what we're doing is good or they like it, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, you have to have a really strong self-concept. And your self-concept has to be that no matter what, you love yourself, right? As women, we're so hard on ourselves. You know, we're up 5 pounds, we're down 10 pounds. And, you know, we don't want to be that person that's like sets their, or encourages your children either. Encourages that your validation comes from that number on the scale, because it doesn't. Our spirit is just using this body as a temporary place to live, and our body works perfectly, and you are uniquely you. You don't have to be or look like anyone else. All you have to do at the end of the day is believe in yourself and be your authentic, true self. So if you find any value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.